All right, good evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock, and I want to make sure that we honor your time. Time you can spend it when you're running out of time. Thank you for carving out a little bit of your evening for us this evening. My intention is to have the presentation portion wrapped up in about 15 to 20 minutes, and then open up the floor for questions. I know that there'll be a ton of different types of questions, everything from kind of what's applicable now, and then all the way down to how many pairs of socks should I pack. And so there might be some questions that I'll say, hey, we'll cover that when it gets a little closer to the trip. And certainly I don't want to disrespect anybody or your need for information, but I want to try to just get the big pieces in place tonight, and then answer those questions for everybody. But for those of you who don't know, my name is Andrew Ely. I direct the choirs here at the high school. Towards the back of the main section is Mr. Mike Compton. He's our band director here at the high school. And then down front in the lovely pink shirt, Danny Helmick, who is our director of theater. And so theater and speech, she is kind of high in the speech world right now. But we do have two theatrical events that take place each year, a fall musical and a spring play, in addition to those speech competitions that she and her students are currently working on right now. State speech this Saturday. Go team. So, as you may or may not have heard, we are planning for a trip to New York City during spring break of 2026, which I believe is why you're all here. If you're looking for any other information, you're in the wrong spot. For our friends who might be watching at home, if you have questions throughout the evening, feel free to email me, and I will return those email within the next 24 hours. AELEY at all of the stuff, anamosa.k12.ia.us. I'll show that email address at the very end of the presentation. And then I will be emailing out this entire presentation along with a couple of other links after the meeting is concluded. We will make sure that those of you who are at the middle school are also going to get that information as well. So if you aren't taking notes, that's totally okay. If you're just rapt with attention at the dulcet sounds of my voice, that is okay. So the dates we are looking at are March 14th through the 19th, 2026. We'll kind of go day by day here with that itinerary in just a short bit, but it will encompass a bulk of the spring break time. On the front end, we will be back on the back end of spring break so there'll be a few days at the back end where students will return and be home with you. I'm sure you're all looking forward to that immensely. So any student involved in choir, band, or theater actively involved in the 2025-26 school year are eligible to attend. So actively means enrolled in band and choir and having participated in at least one theatrical event, be it a musical, speech, or the spring play. That enrollment piece is really important because you'll find out in just a little bit there will be some singing and performing going on, and we do need students, particularly in the second semester, to be enrolled if you're involved in band or choir, because we will be doing some performing while we are on the trip. So it does require some sort of forethought. We are in that scheduling time right now, hence the reason why we're doing the meeting now instead of later in the spring, because some of those scheduling decisions will need to be made really pretty quickly. So here we're going to dive right into the itinerary. And again, this is the portion where if you're not going to take notes, I'm going to send all this information out, and you can take a look at that down the road. We would board on Saturday, March 14th. We would have a lunch stop, and by boarding, the motor coaches, like Dave Michaels is not driving an Anamosa school bus to New York City. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. I think we'll get a lot more people to go. Nothing against Dave Michaels. But these will be the big motor coaches. They'll have the plug-ins at the side of the chairs and the TV screens. And I believe if it's reliable, sometimes the Wi-Fi will work on those as well. We will have a lunch stop, which would be on the cost on the student on the way out. And then we'll stop at Valparaiso University, Indiana, where we'll do a master class, band, and choir, and along with a theatrical tour of their theater facilities while we're on campus. So that would be one of those performing opportunities and educational opportunity that we will employ as we're working our way east. We will stop in Fremont, Ohio that evening. Our dinner that evening is included in the cost of the trip, and it'll be at Dave & Buster's. It's like Chuck E. Cheese on steroids, if none of you are familiar with what Dave & Buster's is, or an adult Chuck E. Cheese, but not where we're going. Included in that is not only a private buffet, but also a $20 gaming card that each student will receive when we get there. That card could be recharged, but that's at a student's cost. And then we will stay in the hotel that evening. That is a little different than the last time we traveled. If any of you had children that went to Orlando, dear God, we went all the way through to Orlando, 26 hours. Not anymore. So we will make a stop. Part of that has to do with some regulations that have changed with over-the-road drivers needing to reduce the amount of time that they're on the road. And so we will stay in the hotel in Fremont, Ohio on the first evening. On day 2, we'll have a breakfast that will be available to us at the hotel. That is included in the trip cost. We'll board those coaches again. That is incorrect. I skipped a slide, didn't I? Breakfast at the hotel, thank you. A lunch stop somewhere along the way, and that would be at the student's cost out of pocket. We will have a $20 dinner voucher at the American Dream Mall in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Think Mall of America type of facility. Very big, very large. No prom dresses will fit on the bus on the way back. Just want to let you know that off the top. So no prom dress shopping, too bad. David, I'm sorry. And then we will check into our hotel in East Rutherford, New Jersey, and that'll be the hotel that we stay in for the duration of our trip. So we are actually not staying in Manhattan proper. We are staying on the other side of the river, and we will come back and forth every day. Cost is significantly less in that regard. Staying in Manhattan is a terrifying thought, and so we're going to get out of the city and stay just across the river in New Jersey. You New York Giants fans or New York Jets fans, I mean, there might be 3 of them in the whole world. We will perhaps see that stadium as we are making our way around the area. Okay? There we go. Okay, so again, breakfast at the hotel when we wake up. Students, that's like really not an option. You're going to get up and you're going to eat breakfast, okay? Because you're going to be on the go all day. So don't think that, oh, I don't like breakfast. Too bad. You like it on this trip, as I say so. So our first day in Manhattan, we will be getting on the ferries and going into Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. A really great, neat opportunity. It's right away in the morning. When we get done with the tour of both of those, it's likely that we will encourage the students to eat lunch at the facilities there, either at Statue of Liberty or Ellis Island. When we return back to the mainland, we will then go on to the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. The last time I was in New York City was 2009. It was still, that area was still actually in cleanup, so there wasn't really anything being built at that time. So I'm really excited personally to see that memorial and museum. We will then make our way over to Little Italy, and we will dine at Puglia's in Little Italy. The students at some point close to the trip will get an opportunity to pick a meal of their choice, and then that meal will be brought out to them. So that is included in the trip cost. And then the remainder of our evening, they'll get some free time in Chinatown. We're just going to let your kids go, no supervision. That's okay, right? That's a joke. I'm kidding. I have some 8th grade parents that really don't know who I am, and they're terrified of me. You'll get to know me eventually, I hope. Let me just address this really quickly, just so people are aware. When we go on a trip like this, all students are assigned one of the adult chaperones, and that's their check-in person everywhere we go. So when we get off a bus, particularly in Manhattan, we'll get off the bus, we'll say, check in with your adult. We'll get to the 9/11 Memorial, check in with your adult. We will say, at X amount of time, go find your adult and check in with them. They're going to be located in this particular location. So for example, when we were in Orlando in 2022, we would say specifically at 1 o'clock, meet at the carousel and check in. And this is simply so that we know that the kiddos are doing okay. It will look a little different in New York because there isn't like a contained area like Disney or something like that, where they are relatively safe, even though they are on their own. At a Disney, they're relatively safe. New York's a whole different ballgame. So your child's chaperone will kind of motate around with them when we are in Chinatown. So for example, student is assigned to me. We'll get together when we get ready to go, and we'll say, okay, this 2-block area is where you're going to be. I will be located here, and I want you to stay in this 2-block area. All the students will have contact information for their chaperone at all times, cell phones, any other device in terms of getting a hold of them. And then we will do more frequent check-ins at that in those locations. So in Chinatown, it might be, okay, you have 20 minutes, go. And then meet me back here in 20 minutes. Then we'll move to another location altogether. You have 20, 30 minutes. We'll go to another location altogether, and then we'll wrap it up by walking back together to the bus and then loading back again. So when you see free time, yes, but it's very much supervised by the adults that we will be taking as chaperones. Let me address that as well. All chaperones will be school staff. So we will have teachers, administrator, somebody who is in the health field to be able to be our chaperones. My experience with chaperones, I've had, this will be my 4th trip with students to New York City. The first trip that I took, we had a parent who, quite honestly, was worse than the children. And I mean that, again, in the most serious way. Was late, did not want to share a seat on the bus and refused to let anybody sit with them, was not kind to the children. And that caused a lot more problems than we needed. Another benefit of having staff be chaperones is that when kids are in a busy area and they are looking around for that familiar face, teachers at the high school are likely the more familiar faces than Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones, who they may not be as familiar with. And additionally, I would hate putting a parent in a situation where a student has to be corrected for a behavior, and then you have family versus family, Hatfields and McCoys, because you talked down to my kid in New York City. So we will take on the responsibility of chaperoning your children. I'm anticipating anywhere between 5 and 6 adults, that includes an administrator, who will be on the trip to monitor students, support them, make sure that they're having a great time, but also keeping them safe. I know that New York is a huge place. It is overwhelming at first, but I am confident with the procedures that we'll have in place, your kid will have a great time and be safe as well. Okay, so I just want to make sure I address that, because I'm sure that's the 900-pound gorilla that's kind of sitting in the room. How are you going to keep my kids safe in New York City, you crazy man? All right, our next day, which would be Tuesday the 17th, again, breakfast included in the cost of the trip. We will board the motor coaches, and we will head to the USS Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum, which is parked. That's not the right word, I know that, but it's docked in New York City. This would be an opportunity for another performance for both band and choir on the deck of the USS Intrepid. There's also a museum that the kids will be able to kind of see, kind of walk through the aircraft carrier and kind of get a better understanding of life aboard. There will be a boxed lunch on the deck there that day. That's included in the cost of the trip. That afternoon, we would have a guided Central Park tour. That'll either be on foot if the weather is nice, or in the motor coaches if the weather is not nice. I've done this, and it's kind of really cool. They'll oftentimes point out a lot of movie sites. That was the building in Ghostbusters. This is where John Lennon was shot. The zoo is that way. It's kind of a really kind of a neat opportunity. Plus, if it's a nice day and they can get out of the bus, I'm sure they'll appreciate that, having been kind of captive in that bus for a while. Dinner, this is another one of those on your own, and dinner will be on their own, and this would be their opportunity to explore Times Square a little bit. We will give them boundaries and parameters, so no further north of X Street, no further south than X Street. We will make sure that they understand those boundaries, and we'll teach them those boundaries and show them where those boundaries are, provide them maps of those boundaries, just so that we know they won't go off map or off the reservation, so to speak. And then ensure that they understand the timeline, because we do have a Broadway musical that evening. That will be our first Broadway show. The next question, I'm sure, is what shows? And the answer is we don't know yet, because we aren't sure entirely what will be in New York City playing at that time. We are also going to get some feedback from the students in the fall who will be traveling, kind of knowing what's going to be playing, what would you like to see, and then we'll give you an opportunity, give students an opportunity to kind of chime in and say this is what we'd like to see. They're very specific about their start times in Broadway. So when we give you time on your own that evening to eat dinner, it will be very intentional about what time we need you back, because you won't get in if the show has started. It doesn't happen, and then you're sitting there for an entire act with nothing to do. So we'll discuss those details a lot more in depth as the trip departure comes closer, but that's just a point to make that tickets are tickets, and they are non-refundable. You miss something, that's just on you. And we won't let that happen, but students, you have to play a part in that as well. Okay. After that musical, we'll head back over to the hotel, check in, and sleep well. On Wednesday, our last full day in town, once again, a breakfast at the hotel. We will head for Radio City Music Hall and take a tour of that facility. If you've seen the OG movie, Annie, when they go to the movies, let's go to the movies. That was Radio City Music Hall in that scene. Again, lunch on your own at that, so we're kind of in that sort of Times Square, sort of Rockefeller Center area. We'll do a matinee performance that afternoon, so Tuesday evening performance, Wednesday matinee, and then dinner at Dallas Barbecue, which is again included in the cost of the tour. And we'll go to the top of the Rock Observatory. So Rockefeller Plaza, if you think about where the ice skating rink is in New York City, that's Rockefeller Plaza. The NBC studio is the Rockefeller building. So we will go to the top of the Rock in the evening and see New York City by night at the top of the Rockefeller Observatory. Okay. All right, this is the one where, hang on, we'll haul it back on one big fell swoop on the final day. So we'll have breakfast at the hotel, we'll board the motor coaches and depart for home, a couple of meal stops, and then we will drive overnight on the way through. So this is where they'll stagger the drivers. We'll switch out drivers at a certain point, most likely overnight, so that the students will barely know that they're even stopping. And then we will make our way back to Anamosa to return home on Friday, March 20th, with tons of memories of an amazing trip. Okay, so that's essentially what the trip will look like. Now, there could be a couple of adjustments given what might be going on in New York City at that time, or any unforeseen closures. We will work with Tri-State Tour and Travel, who will be our travel provider and our tour provider, to adjust either the price or the itinerary to ensure that kids are going to get a great experience. They've done literally hundreds of these tours, and so they have tons of connections. They will actually have a tour coordinator with us on site, so this is not just Andrew Ely and Mike Compton walking these kids into Dallas Barbecue for dinner. Our tour coordinator will be with us, and they will do all of the point work on all of these trips to Statue of Liberty or the 9/11 Museum and all of that. We will have somebody dedicated to us that entire time, and the cost of that is included in the price of the trip as well. So what do you get? This is a little bit of a summary. Round-trip transportation, I'm not going to read every bullet to you, but these are all of the things that are included in the cost of the trip. As you can see, I'm pushing the cost of the trip towards the end of the presentation. I'm no dummy. I'm not as dumb as I look. One thing just to point out, tickets to get into the sites like Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island, Top of the Rock, Intrepid Air and Space Museum, these are all included. So again, if one were to go out and do all of these things on their own, you would have to pay that admission. Any taxes, hotel taxes, gratuities, tipping bus drivers is not necessary. That is part of what we pay for. Any other fees, tolls, etc. All of that's included in the price of the trip. Here we go. Okay, so if we get, ooh, did I hear an ooh over there? Calm down. The more that we get to travel, the lower the cost is per person, right? So a bus costs, let's pretend $10,000. If a bus is full, there's more people paying that bus. If the bus is less full, there's less people paying that bus. So the more we get to travel, the lower the cost will be for everyone. When I say quad, we will make every effort to have 4-person rooms. If the numbers don't work out, we are not going to penalize the student who would be in a 3-person room by asking them to pay more. We are quoting you at a quad price, and that's what everybody will be charged. Okay. Additionally, a person can sign up for trip insurance, which offers you the opportunity to recoup any costs or any payments minus the deposit for any reason. Our company is really easy to work with. Tri-State wants everyone to have a great time. They want this to be a seamless and easy process. They don't want folks to worry. And you'll kind of see that in just a minute when it comes into some payment pieces. They want your kids to travel. And so if something comes up, they're going to work with you. And that's been my experience. This will be probably the 4th trip I've had with Tri-State. I'm sorry, 3rd trip I've had with Tri-State since I started teaching. And they are tremendous. They will answer your phone calls. They will answer your questions. They will work with you. And they are very, very transparent. So for example, in this $1449, the cost of the Broadway tickets have been priced at what they are right now. However, if the price of a show goes down based on the shows that we want to see, and then they will make a bulk credit back to everybody's account. So they're not just going to, oh, yep, that's what we charged you, and that's what your tickets cost. They will bulk credit. So he told me, for example, Hamilton. More than likely that Hamilton's in New York City in a year. It's a pretty popular show. Tickets for that show are actually, you can get tickets in the house for around $79 right now. If that were to go down and we were quoted at $79, we would get the difference back. And then that would be credited back to everybody's account. Okay. That goes the same with any hotel fees if that were to change for anything. If there were any other sort of surcharges, there's a fuel surcharge, and they'll make that right. If we were quoted higher and it comes in a little lower, we will get a credit back to everybody's account as well. They are very, very honest and upfront about their pricing. Travel isn't cheap. I'm sure you all know that. I feel very confident saying, however, if I were to take my family of 4 to New York City and try to do all of these things in 4 or 5 days, that I think anybody would be hard-pressed to try to get a price point much lower than that. I mean, without, staying in a hostel or something like that, I suppose, which I don't think I would recommend. So how are we going to help with the costs of this? We have some possible fundraisers. I know that there's a lot of moan and groan when we talk about selling things. I'm not a huge fan of going out and hawking goods, right? Things that we've done in the past, however, we've had a Pampered Chef sale where folks can just purchase things online, and then a portion of the proceeds come back to this trip. We have had in the past holiday greenery sales that have benefited this. Next year's mattress sale, I've worked with the boosters, and they're on board with the fact that we will take all the profits from next year's mattress sale and push that all the way towards all of the students. So $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 of profit gets spread out X amount of ways to every student traveling. Iowa code does dictate, whether you hear other schools doing it differently or not, this is what Iowa code dictates, that any traveler, anybody who's raising funds, all the money gets distributed equally. Back in the day, it used to be Ava Remley raised $500 on her own, so Ava Remley gets $500. They don't do that anymore. I hate that, but it is the way it is. So any fundraising we do will get spread evenly amongst all the travelers. Okay. So we're going to try to find those fundraising opportunities that maybe don't exist. Don't expect that we're going to ask you to go out and sell Casey's cards or pies. Plus, we don't want to infringe on some of the other things that other groups are doing. So we'll try to find some of those niche kind of fundraisers that would be unique to us that might interest people as well. Okay. So what's next? There isn't anything imminent that anyone has to do after this meeting, okay? Certainly, if you were to scan this QR code, it would take you to the booking site for our trip. And a person can go ahead and they can start filling out all of the information, who's filling out the form, and who is traveling. You have to be 18 to fill out the form on the site, and one of my students asked, well, how are they going to know? The answer is at the end of the form, you have to pay a $250 deposit. So I'm guessing that's probably somebody who's over 18. So I went ahead and I went ahead and started filling out a form. You can get as far as paying the deposit on this form, and then you can sign out. It'll save your progress, and then when you're ready to pay that down payment, you can finish, and then you will show up on the booking site. So for example, if somebody goes home tonight and says, we're ready to put that deposit down for our child, you could do it tonight. If you needed to wait a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, that's completely fine. In the fall, once school has started, we will re-communicate trip information and a sign up by this date, so that any traveler, anybody interested in traveling, will have until sometime after school starts in the fall to be able to sign up. And I think this is an awesome opportunity, and by no means of what I try to tell any parent what to do, but this is an awesome opportunity for you to get your kid to have some skin in the game. They want to travel. You've got now until September to come up with a deposit or more. And I think it's an excellent opportunity for them to understand that travel can happen if you are thoughtful about how you go about planning for it, right? So I've talked with the students a little bit about this. My 8th grade friends, we probably had this conversation a little bit more at depth. $14.49 on the surface is a pretty sticker shock kind of moment, right? If I wanted to pay $20 a week, I can go on my site and pay $20 a week. There's no, when you fill out the booking site and when you do book, they will have due dates for payments. You don't need to follow that. If you're a rule follower, that's going to bother you, but you don't need to follow the payment plan or the suggested plan. And I'll say that one more time. You don't need to follow it. If you want to pay $100 here, $200 here, $50 here, $400 here, go for it. That's totally fine. By the time your kid gets on the bus, we need the trip paid for, right? So no money, Gus, no trip. Okay. Log on and pay as many times as you want. Okay. Everything goes through the booking site, including insurance. I haven't seen how much insurance costs. The last time we went, there were a couple of options. There was less expensive option A, which gave you up to 48 hours, and then a little more expensive option B, which was cancel for any reason right up until when you leave. We are not able to require that of everybody to purchase it. That's completely your choice if you want to purchase travel insurance for this trip, but you can go on there and get that information from the site if and when you decide to book. Okay. As I mentioned, I think this is a fantastic opportunity. I never had an opportunity like this in high school to travel. I think we went to Chicago from Madison, which really wasn't that big of a trip, to be honest with you. And so to have an opportunity to travel, we are afforded the opportunity to do this once every 4 years. So whomever is a high school student next year, this is your opportunity. While you're a high school student, there won't be another one to go on a trip like this necessarily while you're in high school. We are gearing this to try to hit every single performing arts aspect, theatrical design, pit orchestras, performance opportunities, staging, theater, music. We're trying to hit as just many opportunities for these kids as possible, in addition to seeing a place that, let's be honest, not a lot of us in the Midwest maybe get an opportunity to travel to New York City. And it's a pretty amazing place if you haven't been. There's a lot going on, don't get me wrong, but it is a pretty awesome opportunity. Okay, so in the next, I guess it's 6:29. In the next 10 minutes, if we need that much time, I would like to open it up to any questions. I will ask, however, for a couple of students to come up and grab 2 microphones. For our stream and then the meeting that will be sent out, we do want your questions to be on the microphone so that anybody at home watching can hear it, and then anybody watching after the fact can hear it. So if I could get 2 current students to just come up and run microphones around. Thank you, Gavin. And thank you, Jake. And again, if you are at home, and watching, and we don't have the opportunity to monitor the stream, you are welcomed to go ahead and email me your questions at that email address you see, and then I will get those questions answered to you just as quickly as I can. So if you do have a question, now would be an opportunity to raise your hand. One of these gentlemen will bring a microphone around to you, and they will hand you the microphone. You can ask the question. Alrighty, let's start with you.
Hi, Andrew. So as far as cash that the kids need to bring on their own, do you recommend cash or credit card?
I would recommend a preloaded debit card or some sort of card that's much more recoverable than cash. I would say having some cash is probably worthwhile, but I would recommend personally, if your child has a bank account, to have their debit card or some sort of preloaded Visa that I think you can buy almost anywhere. Yeah, and I think more and more places are going cashless. I think about those vending opportunities that we may have along the way. They could very well be cashless. So I would highly recommend. I mean, I know traveler's checks aren't a thing anymore, but like back in the day, that's what we recommended. Next question.
How many kids are usually assigned to an adult? And I know it varies on how many kids
We'll try to
come,
keep
but
it to around 15 to 20 at max. I think in Orlando it was about 18-ish. And again, we're the same adults that go to their room and check them in at night, make sure that all the bodies are in there. Like, we need to see every single person. We need to communicate with every single person. I'll wake children up if they're asleep, just so that I know that they're in their room safe, okay? And then, we'll rotate. Something that I didn't mention that I really do think to mention, our travel company also hires private security. Each evening we're in the hotel, and they will patrol our hallways in the evening. So as an extra added piece of safety and security, 15 to 18, give or take.
And is that 15, 18 like from the same class, or is it freshmen, sophomore, juniors?
It could be all over the place. So if I get 5 rooms full of kids at 20 kids, it could be 3 rooms of boys and 2 rooms of girls. And it could be all freshmen, all juniors, a mixture. They'll be allowed to pick their roommates when it gets close to that time. They'll be allowed to pick who they sit next to on the bus. The only time that we'll move them on the bus is that overnight on the way back. When we stop at our last stop, we'll take and separate the bus by gender, so that one gender is in the back of the bus, one gender is in the front of the bus. So on that overnight on the way back. Okay, good questions. Keep them coming. Jake, you're slow.
If parents go, they don't have to quad up, do they? Like, how does that work?
So there has been a question that has been posed of me, and I have talked with our travel agent about the possibility of like a parent followers bus. I don't know if there's much interest for that. If there were interest in that, no, you would not need to quad up. Your price would look different than the student price, but that would be an option. I'll devise a way to try to figure out how much interest there might be. Parent follower groups that I've had in the past generally follow the same itinerary. The differences are like that free time. Obviously, you don't have to have a chaperone. Well, Heidi, you might, but the rest are going to be okay. And so there's obviously a little bit more freedom, but we still, like, when it's time to go, you got to go, and that type of thing. And they have tailored those trips at times to allow the adults a little bit different itinerary, depending on, we're at the Statue of Liberty and adults are like, meh, then maybe something different at that point. I'll devise a way to kind of gauge how many people might be interested, and then we'll go from there. Red shirt? Jake, you're slow. Pay attention, Jake.
This might be premature, but what about clothing? What is their dress code for?
Yeah, there'll be days where we're going to ask them to dress nicer. When we go to shows, they'll be expected to dress up, and we'll explain what that will look like. Obviously, comfortable footwear is going to be important when we do a lot of walking. So when we get closer to the actual departure, we'll sort of outline each day for them and say, this is what we recommend you wear. We'll talk about like what to pack, what not to pack. We'll talk about like food on the bus, which is allowed, but we don't need like the entire buffet, that type of thing. So 100% a great question, but we'll get down to the nitty gritty when we get a little closer. Oh, that boy, Jake. Proud of you, buddy. I knew you had it in you.
You said that the check-in points. Is there a plan in place then if a student doesn't check in?
Oftentimes, so for example, when I had my group in Orlando, we did a check-in and I had 4 boys that were late. And they had communicated with me that they were in line in a ride. And so I was expecting them. They were just quite a bit later than I expected them. And so with New York and it being just a little bit different setup, our chaperones will be a lot more present with the kids in the places that they go. So we might have, a bunch of kids that want to go to the Hershey's 3-story store in Times Square. And so maybe we'll collectively say who wants to go here. All right, we're all going to go here, and then from here we'll spread you out, and then we'll just communicate throughout the time that they have to say, hey, you've got 15 minutes before we need to report. Let's make sure we're wrapping up. And then oftentimes kiddos will say, hey, I'm in line paying. I'll get there as soon as I can. We totally understand. Great question.
This sounds silly, but could you just live 360 all of our kids?
There's not, if you can do it, if I can do it, I will. I seriously, I don't know if that's allowed. The question was, can you life 360 all of your children? If it's temporary, yeah. If I have to know where all of them are for after this trip, I'll go crazy. But I'm open. I consider myself somewhat techie, but I short of like an Apple tag on all of them, I don't know. Which again, I mean, but I'm open to suggestion. I'm certainly going to work with our administrators to discuss what fits best for our group. My experience when I've taken kids and I took the rough and tumble kids from Cedar Rapids, they get to New York and they are humbled by the size of the city. And so even our most adventurous ones, Audrey Zoller, are probably still I'm not wrong, are overwhelmed and are less likely to want to explore out because of the sheer scope of where they are. And I'm not going to kid you when I tell you scary stories. I'll do that on purpose because they are scary stories. And your return to your families is the most important thing. And the unfortunate conversation of what happens if a kid misbehaves, the most egregious is that we send them home on your dollar with an adult to accompany them home. And we send them immediately on a plane, and you get them right away. And you're paying for that trip and the adult's trip back. So I need students to understand that, you're responsible here, right? Being a traveler means making responsible decisions. Being a responsible adult involves calculated risks, not silly risks, okay? And there are fun and games in Anamosa that don't work in other places, okay? New York is one of those places where lots of our fun and games that we're used to aren't going to fly. So I need you to understand that now, and then we'll cover some of those other scenarios. Like the characters in Times Square, don't take pictures with them because they're going to make you pay them, and they'll harass you. So it's cute to go up to Elmo and snap a selfie, and then he's going to want $50, and he's not going to leave you alone. So that's a thing. That's a real thing, and you need to know that, and so we're going to tell you that. Jazz band members, I'm sure you probably need to get on the road, so we'll go ahead and let those folks know that they need to get up and go now. Let's continue to ask some questions. We're getting some really good ones here.
it Tri-City that does the touring?
Tri-State, yes.
Tri-State, have they still been running tours with the migrant presence and some of the expanded homeless populations they have in New York City? Are they trying to work around that?
I don't know what their role is in that at this point in time. I know that they own their own buses, which they prepare for us. I know that there's a process of getting buses ready to go and moving our people. These are already reserved for us so that there will not be any problem as far as having transportation, nor that transportation will be clean and prepped and specifically for us. I don't know what their other responsibilities are, but we've signed a contract with them saying this is what we're going to need, so we'll have what we need from them for our trip. Am I answering your question? Okay. Let's talk afterwards so I can better understand your question, if that's okay. Correct. That's 100% right. So now I understand what you're saying. So back in 2022, our initial trip plan was going to be New York City. And with COVID, at that time, when we were starting to plan, about this time in 2021, there were still mask mandates in New York City. That didn't fit our population. We weren't, and that was like on buses, that was pretty much everywhere at that time. And so we shifted and made Disney and Orlando our trip destination. So we will continue to monitor the situation. And if, number one, safety is always going to be our number one driver of decisions that get made. If, in conversing with Tri-State, there is an atmosphere that is not safe for our students and we simply won't go, and we will refund trips. That's just the way it's going to be. If we can pivot to a different trip in time, then certainly that would be my next option, so that kids would still get an opportunity to travel. But if that isn't going to work out, then we would, obviously cancel a trip and refund monies. But so I think the first contingency is to pivot to try to come up with a secondary option, and then from there decide if that's going to be an option or if canceling a trip would be the option. Wait time, wait time, wait time. Okay, if there are other questions that people did not want to raise their hand and ask, I will sit up here for just a short little bit. I do have to pick up a daughter from work in Marion in about 45 minutes, so I will respectfully dismiss myself at 7:15, if that's all right with everybody. But if something comes up after the fact, take a picture of my email address and feel free to send me a message, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. Or if you have would like to go a little bit deeper on some questions, we can set up a time for a phone conversation. I'd be happy to give you a call as well. Alrighty. Tell you what I'll do. I'm going to go back to the booking site QR, and then you can probably find my email address on the website, the school website. That way that's up there in case you just want to get that bookmarked on your phone now. Again, thank you so much for being out here this evening. I appreciate your time. Have a pleasant rest of your evening. Thank you. Appreciate it, guys. Even you, Jake.